Hello and welcome back to day 2 of the truss rod adjustment and shielding my Stratocaster 1987 Squier ST362L. It's all original, nothing has been replaced on it other than the strings, and so I'm trying to shield the guitar without removing the pickups, potentiometers, etc. So, as I say, I did not want to replace the pickups or the potentiometer or anything, so I've just left it attached. But I've got those cavities all done. Now I just have to worry about the rest of the large cavity in the bottom. I just have to do the walls there a bit. Be very careful when you're doing around these holes where the conductors go into the guitar. 2 of them go down to your output jack. 1 of them goes in through the back to the tremola to keep it grounded out. And after we do this, then we have to do the back of the pick guard, because, well, that's the other part. I saw what they called Faraday tape. Now it was more of a mesh, like a metal mesh on tape, and it was made for this sort of reason, but every time I've seen any of the guitar techs shield a guitar, they use solid and usually copper tape. You want a little bit of a lip to come over the top so that it attaches to the bottom of the pick guard. And I'm using a pencil, the rubber of a pencil, to kind of seat and make sure that everything stays in spot. And you want to make sure that it does, because if any of this comes up and starts tagging this sort of stuff, well, then you've got a different issue. Okay, is that a hole or is that just a black spot? I'm going to go with it's just a black spot. Okay. Also being very careful to try not to whatever it was I was going to say there. But the biggest struggle I've had is with this tape. Patience, patience. Now I'm going to pause you while I swear a bit and try and get the rest of this here. Oh, there we go. Swearing avoided. Okay, there we go. Now use the pencil to push down in the corners, make sure you get good contact, everything is seated properly. And with that is all of our cavities shielded. Now this is going to be probably the easier part because it's all flat. But what I want to do first off is double check and make sure that when I put this on here, and well, it does, it's fairly flat, and it will go better once I get all the screws in their proper hole in that. Don't see any tin foil. Awesome. That should fit pretty much perfectly in there. use the scissors to sort of plant it against that part. Now, this is against the plastic part. You don't want it to attach to the metal because bzz. This here will take up that area there rather well. It's going to be a little tricky getting it under the conductor, but we'll do it. Well, that went better than I thought it would. Hint to anybody who decides to do this, whatever the guy who's doing it charges you to do it, pay it. Let's just where I cut out a little corner. Take the knife and make sure that we aren't hampering the movement of the pickup. Okay. And then we will use this piece or maybe this piece to cover that. Okay, we are pretty much set, I think. Done about all we can do. Now we go over the whole thing and make sure that we are on surface. Everything is down. I'm telling you, whatever they want to do this, pay it. Just pay it. Pay it and smile. It's going to be my new motto. Pay it and smile. Okay. Get all this garbage out of the way. I'm going to pause, and you're going to see this place clean up just like that. Okay, so here we go. Shielded cavities and shielded plate. So now we are going to, I think we're just going to put this back on here, make sure that nothing gets pinched. All the wires go down the center just like they did before. And cables go in their proper spot. No tin foil is hanging out the edges. Wah, stinking la. At which point we bring out all the pickguard screws. We carefully plant them. Remember that you want to kind of put these in by hand, because you do not want to strip these. Remembering that if you have certain Squier Strats, if you have two screws that are a little bit longer and have a collar, thread collar head, they go beside the bridge assembly, these two here. This particular one doesn't have it because it's an 87, but I know the 97 made in Korea does have two longer screws here and there. Now it's only about 1/4 of an inch, and you'll notice that there's a little collar shaft. Aha, I remember that. That doesn't go in there. Because one of my screws is broken off halfway down, and that's the one. Maybe that's why the other Squiers have longer screws, because these ones just kept breaking. It's possible. This one's a left-handed one, and the geniuses at Squier thought enough to give me left-handed pots, or they're wired left-handed. There is a way to do that. You can just use right-handed ones and wire them backwards. I haven't looked into that yet, but they changed the pots so that the things wind backwards, but left right-handed knobs on it, so the knobs, yeah, that's what left-handers deal with. On top of the fact that every volume control on every stereo, every radio I've ever come to, you turn this way to turn it up. Why would you switch it for left-handers to make it backwards? We already have enough stuff backwards that we have to deal with every day. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. So you always put all the screws in by hand or lightly first, because you don't want them out of alignment or anything. And then you tighten them down slowly. And evenly. And just tightening it a little bit each time, because you'll know which ones are gonna strip. Alrighty, there we go. Pick guard's back on, still has to be wiped up and cleaned, but there's no tin foil sticking out anywhere around. Plate seems to be fully seated everywhere. Time for neck reinstall. And here is the neck. First thing we're going to check on it is to see that there is still a back bow in it, because I've had it clamped overnight, and I had it off there earlier this morning and it was fairly straight. It is fairly straight there now too, but there is a bit of a back bow. The truss rod screw still will not turn, I know, but nope, she's planted. Alright, so now let's move our clamp and clamping mechanisms out of the way. Show you what I did do to make this here clamp. This is an old pillar from your banister on your deck. It's just cedar. Cut a couple of squares off one end. They go on the faceplate. So then once I pinch it, I can pinch in the middle and move the rest. I took another 4-inch piece off the end, grooved it out to fit my neck, sanded it, make sure it's nice and smooth. So then I just put the clamp between there and here, and instant back bow. I know it was kind of red greenish, but that's what happens. So now we are going to take a final look. ST362L with an F and an H. The H is actually off of there. 362L. Take the neck, make sure it fits in here perfectly, which it does because I've had it off many times. Flip, twist so the buttons don't get bent. And put the plate back on. This plate has a little plastic spacer gasket on it. Just keeps that from marking the back of the guitar, I guess. Once again, you take the screws and you start them by hand. Do not use a drill to do this, because you do not want to mess up where the holes are already made in this. The guys at the factory made sure that they were in the perfect spot. You don't want to put a drill on there and then create new holes or wallow out the ones that were on it. They are all completely seated now. Take your screwdriver and put it on there, but make sure that you're not putting any excess pressure on it to turn them in. Now you just want to sink them but not tighten them. Get them so that they sit in there at least a little bit snug, but not tightened. Because what you want to do then is double check, make sure that everything is seated. For instance, there's a little bit of a gap. That will probably go away as we tighten it down. But we do know that the screws are in the proper hole, because it will not come off. And there, that just gave us about half a turn to a turn on each one. Double check again. Neck is seated solidly there. Over here. Make sure that there's no gaps that look out of place. On this side, you can just check around this here gap here. If there's any bare finish or a difference in the finish, that means it isn't solidly set. Okay. So I'm comfortable that it's good. Stagger back and forth. Tighten it just a little bit each time. Go to the smaller Phillips, make sure these are all tight, which they are. It's about as flat as I've ever seen it. If anything, maybe a slight back bow, but that'll be okay because we are now putting on our new strings. Not a paid promotion. These are Roto Sound, British, because I'm Canadian. I won't say anything more than that. If you really don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look at history from early 2025. So we're going to start with the blue because that's where the thick ones are. I guess it makes sense because they only used the 3 different colors, but 321, 321. So they should have a fairly good difference in the thickness once you pull them out. Holding them far away so I don't poke myself in the eye. And we have a thick blue and a thin blue. So we're going to take the thin blue, put it over there. Always got to be extra careful with this because me being left-handed, I've put it in the wrong one many times. When you're putting the strings in, see the blue knob. When it starts going in that hole, what you want to do is grab a hold on the front. When that disappears, pull, and you want to go about that far so that you know that that spool is seated in the proper spot. And then, so you've got that seated, give it a little crank over the saddle just so that you know where it roughly goes. Up here, put it in the nut, go 2 spindles past where you're going. I'm going on this one, so I go past that one, and then I cut it here. That gives me the proper amount of windings on here. If you have 3 and 3 for the tuners, obviously don't go that far because you're going to end up with a lot of windings. Okay, so I've gone and got my clippers. Not a paid promotion. Yeah, through here, 1, 2, clip. Now hold on to both sides so that the tail doesn't go shooting across the room. Now we're going to put this through the hole. I know there's all kinds of different ways that people tie off their strings and stuff, I just do a straight in, leave a little bit of a tail, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, and then bend. Make sure you got a good crank on there. So, winder, make sure that the string goes under the tail as it comes around the first time, and then when you get to the cranking part, make sure it goes under that as well. You want the string to always wind down into the guitar. So take your tail, put it into a little itty bitty coil. You want to make sure you don't lose these anywhere because they are dangerous. Okay, put them in a safe spot. Now, after the blue was a white. I've never used this make before, so it's going to be new, and we'll see how we like them. The spool is just disappearing in the back. Grab a hold of the front. When it disappears, pull. You want about that much room. Crank it over the saddle, up past the second spindle, hold both sides and cut. Okay, through the spindle, about 1/8 inch hanging out, and crank. And wind under the tail, under the crank, rolling down into the head stock. The other thing I noticed earlier was that this second winder is a little tight. So we take our small Phillips, and right in the end of the tuning paddle is a Phillips screw. We want to loosen it just a little bit. Doesn't take much to adjust those. That will just lessen the tension on the twisting. Okay. Next string will be red. Pulling the string through, spool disappears. 2 inches. Bend over there, up past the second spindle, that beyond what you want to put it into. 2 hands, snap. Little interesting tidbit you might not know. Squier originally made strings. They made strings for Fender. Fender finally decided that they should own somebody who makes strings, and bought Squier. And that's how they ended up being related. Okay, so I've got it a little bit up to tune, but it's going to have to sit for a bit and see where it sits. But of course, with brand new strings, it takes a while for them to get into. Of course, with brand new strings, it takes them a while to stretch in. You got to tune it, reef on it. So it might take a little bit for the neck to settle. So let me get it in tune. Be right back. Okay, so now we've got it in tune. And the action is a little extra low. Bending that. The board is as straight as it can possibly be, but I've got real low action, so I'm probably going to have to do like I did before. There are 2 lugs either side of each string. Screwing them down into the guitar will raise the saddle, hence raising your action, because I have it extremely too low. Where's my tester? Okay. For instance, at the 12th is about 1 millimeter. Which is way too low. I like to have 150, 175. This is at 1. The third one is below 1.75. 1. 1 millimeter. So we've got it way too low, but that's simple enough. I'm going to leave it this way first off for a day and see if the neck will settle more, because it was off for a day and a half and it was into a back bow. So because I was trying to get this here neck straight as possible, and it is straight as possible right now. There is barely any bow to it at all, so I'm going to leave it a day or two, let it settle, make sure. But what's really important is, did the shielding work? So I'm about to plug it in. As I say, the original video I did on this messed up halfway through, so I don't have something for you to compare it to the beginning, but I know up here how it sounded before, and so we're gonna set it up and see how it sounds now. So there we go. The only hum that I'm hearing is from the amp itself. Whether I crank it up or crank it down, there's no extra hum from the axe itself, it's from the amp. So the shielding of the interior did work. I was skeptical, to tell you the truth, but I wanted to try it anyways, and it worked. So there we have it. 1987 Squier Stratocaster ST362L, made in Japan. All original, other than the only mod I've done is I have shielded the inside with aluminum tape, not copper. Much cheaper. It was a bit of a pain in the behind to do, but I did it without unhooking any of the wires. I just wanted to, I wasn't going to change out the pickups or the potentiometers or anything like that. It's all original. I want to keep it that way. So there we have it. Thank you for watching. Share, like, subscribe. I just did this so that you can tell that anybody can do this. You have to have patience, but it can be done. Maybe someday I should get patience. Thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. Talk to you next time. Bye now.